Chapter 10. The Blood Eagle and Viking Torture. Spring has fully arrived, and with it comes news that sends a chill through the entire settlement. A neighboring Jarl has been accused of betraying an alliance, selling information to enemies that led to a disastrous raid where many men died. The accusation has been proven through witnesses and evidence. Now comes the punishment. You're told that the entire region is invited to witness the execution. This won't be a simple beheading or hanging. This will be something else entirely. Something that will be talked about for generations. The Blood Eagle. Olaf says quietly when you ask what's going to happen. His face is grim. I've only seen it once before, many years ago. I still have nightmares about it. The Blood Eagle. You've heard whispers of this legendary Viking torture method, but you've never witnessed it. Part of you hopes you never will, but you have no choice. Everyone is expected to attend. To not witness this punishment would be seen as weakness, or worse, sympathy for the traitor. The journey to the execution site takes 2 days. Hundreds of people are converging from settlements all across the region. This isn't just an execution. It's a political statement, a reminder of what happens to those who betray their oaths and their people. When you arrive, you find a valley already filled with people. Tents and temporary shelters dot the landscape. Fires burn everywhere. There's an almost festival-like atmosphere, which disturbs you. People are treating this like entertainment. The condemned man is kept in a wooden cage, exposed to the elements and the jeering crowd. His name is Hakon, and he was once a powerful Jarl himself. Now he's broken, filthy, barely recognizable as human. He's been kept in that cage for weeks, fed minimally, denied basic dignity. People throw things at the cage. Rotting food, excrement, stones. Children are encouraged to participate, taught that this is what happens to traitors. Hakon doesn't react anymore. He just sits in his own filth, staring at nothing. The execution is scheduled for the following morning. That night, around countless fires, people discuss what they've heard about the Blood Eagle. Most have never seen it performed. It's reserved for only the most heinous crimes, betrayal, oath-breaking, particularly cowardly murders. An old man who witnessed one decades ago describes it in detail, his voice carrying in the firelight. They strip him naked and bind him face down on a large stone or wooden frame, he begins. Then the executioner takes a very sharp axe or knife and cuts along both sides of the spine, from the neck down to the lower back. The listeners are silent, transfixed. Then he uses the blade to separate the ribs from the spine, cutting through the muscle and cartilage. It has to be done carefully, precisely. The ribs must be cut but not broken. They need to stay attached at the front. Someone asks, "Is he still alive during this?" "Oh yes," the old man confirms, "very much alive." Screaming, though they usually gag him so the screams don't disturb the ritual. The pain is beyond imagining. You're being carved open while fully conscious, he continues. Once the ribs are separated from the spine, they're bent outward, forced open like wings. That's where the name comes from. The ribs spread out like an eagle's wings. And then, if the executioner is skilled and the victim is still alive, the lungs are pulled out through the opening and laid on top of the wings. The crowd is both horrified and fascinated. This is the most brutal form of execution the Vikings practice, reserved for enemies who deserve the most painful death imaginable. How long does it take to die? Someone asks. The old man shrugs. Depends. If done quickly and the victim goes into shock, maybe minutes. But if the executioner deliberately goes slowly, making small cuts, taking his time, it could be half an hour or more of pure agony before death comes. That night, you can't sleep. The description keeps playing in your mind. Tomorrow, you'll witness this in person. You'll watch a man be literally carved apart while alive. Dawn comes too quickly. The crowd gathers in a natural amphitheater, a bowl in the landscape where everyone can see the large flat stone that's been prepared at the center. Hakon is dragged from his cage. He's given water to ensure he's conscious and aware. They want him to know exactly what's happening, to strip him even of the mercy of delirium. He's brought to the stone and bound face down, his arms and legs spread and tied so he can't move. He's completely naked, his back exposed to the crowd and to the executioner. The executioner is a specialist brought in specifically for this task. He's a massive man with a scarred, impassive face. In his hands he carries several implements, axes of different sizes, knives of various shapes, all honed to razor sharpness. A Gothi steps forward and addresses the crowd. Håkon Eriksson stands accused of betraying his sworn oaths, of selling information to our enemies, of causing the deaths of 15 brave warriors. He has been judged guilty by the assembly of free men. His punishment is death by blood eagle, as befits a traitor and oathbreaker. Let this serve as a warning to all who would consider such treachery. The Gothi steps back. The executioner approaches Hakon. What happens next will haunt you for the rest of your life. The executioner begins with a long, shallow cut down each side of the spine, from the base of the neck to the lower back. Hakon screams, a sound of pure animal terror and agony. His body convulses against the restraints, but he can't move. Blood wells up from the cuts, running down his sides and pooling on the stone beneath him. The executioner works methodically, widening the cuts, going deeper until he reaches the ribs. The crowd watches in complete silence. This isn't cheering or celebration. This is witnessing something primal and terrible. The executioner switches to a smaller, more precise knife. He begins the delicate work of separating the ribs from the spine, cutting through the costovertebral joints that connect them. Each cut produces a distinct sound, tissue parting, cartilage separating, and fresh screams from Hakon. You can't look away. It's too horrible. But somehow you're frozen, forced to witness every moment. The executioner works on the right side first, separating each rib from the spine with careful, deliberate cuts. Then he moves to the left side and repeats the process. The precision is remarkable and horrifying. He's done this before. He knows exactly where to cut. Hakon has stopped screaming. He's making sounds, low moans and whimpers, but his voice is gone. His hands are clawing at the stone he's bound to, nails breaking, fingers bleeding from the desperate need to grab onto something, anything. The ribs are now separated from the spine on both sides. The executioner sets down his knife and uses his hands to forcefully bend the ribs outward, spreading them apart, creating the wings. The sound of ribs being forced open is nauseating. A creaking, cracking sound mixed with wet tearing as tissue gives way. Hakon's body arches upward as much as the bonds allow. A final desperate attempt to escape the agony. His back is now a grotesque parody of wings, ribs spread outward, exposing the interior of his chest cavity. You can see his organs, his lungs inflating and deflating as he struggles to breathe. The executioner reaches into the cavity. With careful movements he pulls the lungs out through the opening, laying them on top of the spread ribs. They're still functioning, still moving with each desperate breath Hakon takes. The sight is beyond description. A human being transformed into a grotesque display, his own lungs pulled out and displayed like a trophy while he's still alive. Hakon is somehow still conscious. His eyes are open, staring at nothing. His mouth moves, but no sound comes out. He's beyond screaming, beyond pain that can be expressed. He's in a realm of suffering that has no words. The executioner steps back, his work complete. Now it's just a matter of waiting for death. It takes 7 minutes. You count them. 7 minutes of Hakon lying there with his back carved open, his lungs exposed, his body in shock but not yet dead. 7 minutes of the crowd watching in absolute silence. Finally, mercifully, his breathing stops. The lungs cease their movement. Hakon is dead. The crowd begins to disperse, subdued. No one is celebrating. Even those who hated Hakon, who wanted to see him punished, seem disturbed by what they've witnessed. You walk away feeling sick, shaken, fundamentally changed by what you've seen. This is Viking justice at its most extreme. This is what they're capable of. That night, around fires, people discuss the execution. Some argue about whether he deserved it. Most agree that betrayal warrants severe punishment. But some question whether any crime deserves that level of suffering. It's meant to be a deterrent, someone argues. After witnessing that, who would dare betray their oaths? But it's inhuman. Another counters. We're not animals. There are limits. Are there? A third asks. Where do we draw the line? He caused the deaths of 15 men through his betrayal. Should we show him mercy he didn't show them? These debates continue late into the night, but they don't change anything. The blood eagle has been performed. The message has been sent. Over the following days, as you travel back to your settlement, you learn more about Viking torture and execution methods. The blood eagle is the most extreme, but there are others. Hanging is common, especially for thieves and lesser criminals, but not the quick death of a broken neck. Viking hanging is slow strangulation, the victim left to dangle and choke for minutes or even hours if the drop isn't high enough. Burning is used for particularly hated enemies, or for those accused of sorcery. Being burned alive is considered both a physical and spiritual punishment, destroying the body so completely that the soul might not find its way to the afterlife. Drowning is common for certain types of crimes, especially for women accused of adultery or infanticide. The accused is weighted down and thrown into deep water, either from a boat or off a cliff into the sea. It's considered a clean death, leaving no blood, which some believe is more merciful. Strangulation with a rope or leather thong is another method, sometimes combined with other tortures first. The victim is slowly choked until death, a process that can take several minutes of desperate struggle. For traitors and oath-breakers who aren't given the blood eagle, there's another horrific punishment, being staked out on the shore at low tide. The victim is bound to stakes driven into the sand, spread eagle, unable to move. Then the executioners simply leave. When the tide comes in, the victim slowly drowns as the water rises, unable to escape. It can take hours, watching the water get higher, knowing exactly how you're going to die, but unable to do anything about it. You hear a story about a man who survived this punishment. The stakes weren't driven deep enough and he managed to pull one free as the water rose. He escaped and fled, becoming an outlaw. When he was eventually captured years later, they repeated the punishment, but this time they made sure the stakes were secure. He drowned, screaming curses at his executioners. Mutilation is also common, though usually not as a death sentence. Cutting off hands, feet, ears, noses, or blinding, these are punishments for thieves, liars, or those who commit lesser crimes but aren't considered worthy of death. A thief might lose his right hand, making it impossible for him to steal effectively again, and marking him permanently as a criminal. A liar or false witness might lose his tongue or have his mouth split open from the corners, creating a permanent smile that disfigures his face and marks his crime. Blinding is reserved for serious crimes short of murder. The victim's eyes are gouged out or burned with hot irons, leaving him dependent on others for survival, a living reminder of his crime. You meet a man with no nose, just a gaping hole in the center of his face. He was caught stealing from a temple and had his nose cut off as punishment. The disfigurement is permanent and unmistakable. Everyone who sees him knows what he did. These punishments serve multiple purposes. They're retribution for crimes, deterrence to others who might consider similar actions, and practical solutions to remove dangerous people from society without having to feed and guard them as prisoners. Vikings don't have prisons in the modern sense. Keeping someone locked up long-term is expensive and impractical, so punishments are immediate and physical. Execution, mutilation, outlawry, or fines. Justice is swift and visible. But perhaps the most psychologically devastating punishment isn't physical at all. It's outlawry, which you've heard about but now learn the full implications of. When someone is declared an outlaw, they're expelled from society entirely. They lose all legal rights and protections. Anyone can kill them without consequence. They cannot own property, cannot trade, cannot seek shelter or help from anyone. They're essentially declared non-human, erased from society as if they never existed. An outlaw must flee to the wilderness and try to survive alone, or leave the country entirely. But even in exile, the outlawry follows them. Other Viking communities know about outlaws and won't harbor them. They're pariahs wherever they go. Some outlaws band together, forming groups of desperate men who survive through theft and violence. These outlaw bands are hunted down like animals whenever they're discovered. You hear a story about an outlaw named Grettir, who survived for 20 years in the wilderness of Iceland, living in caves, stealing from isolated farms, constantly on the run. He was finally cornered on an island and killed by a group of farmers who'd been tracking him for months. His story is told as a cautionary tale, but also with a strange sort of respect. Grettir was a capable man who survived against impossible odds, but in the end, the community got him. No one can survive alone forever. The psychological torture of outlawry is profound. Humans are social creatures. To be completely cut off from all human contact, to know that everyone you encounter might kill you, to have no place of safety, it's a living death. Some outlaws commit suicide rather than endure it. Others deliberately provoke someone into killing them, seeking death as an escape from their isolation. This is Viking justice. Brutal, public, designed to reinforce social bonds through fear and spectacle, but it's not mindlessly cruel. There's a logic to it. In a society without extensive law enforcement, where communities are small and everyone knows everyone, public punishment serves essential functions. It demonstrates that justice has been done, satisfying the need for revenge and preventing blood feuds from spiraling out of control. It deters others from committing similar crimes through fear, and it removes dangerous individuals from the community permanently. Is it more brutal than modern justice systems? Absolutely, but it's also more honest in some ways. There's no pretense of rehabilitation. No one is locked away in a prison and forgotten. Justice is immediate, visible, and understood by everyone. You return to your settlement, deeply troubled by what you've witnessed. The blood eagle, in particular, haunts your dreams. You wake up sweating, remembering Halgon's screams, the sight of his lungs being pulled from his body. But life continues. The fields need planting. The animals need tending. Work doesn't stop because you're traumatized. And you realize something? This is how Viking society maintains order. Not through laws written in books or police forces, but through the threat of public, brutal punishment. Everyone knows what will happen if they betray their oaths, if they steal, if they murder. They've seen it with their own eyes. Does it work? To some extent, yes. Crime rates in Viking society are probably lower than they would be otherwise, though there's no way to measure this objectively. Fear is a powerful motivator, but it also creates a culture of violence, where brutality is normalized, where children are raised watching people being tortured to death and told this is justice. You think about the children at the execution, some as young as 5 or 6, watching Hakon being carved apart. What does that do to a developing mind? How does it shape their understanding of justice, of humanity, of what acceptable behavior? The answer, you realize, is that it creates more Vikings. Children who grow up watching brutal executions become adults who perform or witness them without flinching. The cycle perpetuates itself. This is the dark heart of Viking culture. Not the raids or and you're part of it now. You witnessed the blood eagle and did nothing. You watched a man be tortured to death and didn't object. You're complicit. That knowledge sits heavy in your chest as summer approaches, and the raiding season begins again, because you know that the violence you witnessed being inflicted on Hakon, you're about to inflict on others. The blood eagle might be reserved for traitors, but the violence of raiding, the casual cruelty toward enemies and captives, that's just as brutal, and you're expected to participate. This is what it means to be a Viking. Not just to endure violence, but to inflict it. Not just to witness brutality, but to perform it. And the terrifying thing, you're getting used to it. The blood eagle was shocking. Yes, but already, weeks later, the horror is fading. Already you're able to think about it without feeling sick. Already it's becoming just another memory, another story to tell. You're being brutalized, desensitized, turned into someone who can witness or commit terrible acts without breaking. And maybe that's the real torture. Not what was done to Hakon, but what witnessing it did to you. This is the Viking Age, and it changes everyone it touches.